Hello, good evening. It is Monday, August 18th at 8:30 in the evening. And I had an idea that I wanted to share some poetry readings that I've read that really have become meaningful to me, and I wanted to share them to you, with you. And I'm going to be sharing poetry written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And this is a gentleman who writes beautiful poetry, wonderful rhythm, wonderful rhyming to it, and it's just a great read and very meaningful as well. So I wanted to take a few moments and share some of these poems with you that I have thoroughly enjoyed. Now, the book I'm using is Longfellow's Poetical Works. And this book has a little bit of history. Back in high school, I used to go to auctions, household auctions, garage sales, moving sales, etc. And at these auctions, they'd have boxes of books, and you bid on them, and you could buy a box of books for $2 or $3 a box, and so you could get some interesting things to read for a few bucks. And I actually bought this book at one of those auctions, and I never picked it up. I never read it, and I took it with me everywhere I went. All the moves that I made. This book came with me, and finally 2 years ago I happened to be looking through my library and I found this book, and I thought, well, I think I'm going to try and read that. And I found it to be one of the most really rewarding experiences that I've had. I've loved the poetry that he wrote and the meaning of it, and the narrative and the story and the rhythm, like I said, and the rhyme. It's just a wonderful, wonderful read. And I couldn't put this book down. I think it's 500, 600 pages, and I couldn't put it down. And I read all of his stuff out loud. When I found that when you read poetry, it means a whole lot more to me if you read it out loud. So anyway, it's a good thing I live pretty much by myself, because I could read this stuff out loud and not bother anybody. But Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Now, he was born, I'll give you a little biography of his. He was born in February of 1807 at Portland, Maine. And he grew up there, and then he went to Bowdoin College, Bowdoin College. Now, that was in Brunswick, Maine, and that was only about 25 miles from where he grew up at Portland. And then he graduated from Bowdoin College, and then he went to Europe and traveled for 3 years, and had a learning journey there, learned a lot about languages and the people and the areas, and then he was invited to be a teacher at Bowdoin College, where he graduated, and he did that for a number of years, and then he was invited to be a professor at Harvard. And before that, before he became a professor there, he took another tour of Europe, and he went to countries that he didn't go to the first time, and so he was there again 3 years and learned a great deal about the language and the people and the history of the area. And then he came home, and he was an instructor at this college, and then he was promoted to teach at Harvard. And this is where he spent his life, at Harvard. And this was, Harvard was at Cambridge, Massachusetts. And he became a professor there, in 1854, and he continued to live in Cambridge and teach at Harvard until his death in 1882. And so he lived his life there, and he lived right on campus at Harvard, and he lived in a famous house called Craigie House. And this Craigie House has a great history. It was where General George Washington had his headquarters when he was right as the Revolutionary War was beginning, and that's where he had his headquarters. And so anyway, this is where Henry Wadsworth Longfellow spent most of his days. His family, his wife and his family lived there for many years. He lost his wife early, and this was a very difficult challenge for him, but he brought up his kids, and he was a wonderful dad, so then he lived out his life in Cambridge at Harvard. And so I thought I'd spend a little time. I've got this book, and as I shared with you, I got it a long time ago, and had just picked it up about 2 or 3 years ago and started reading. And as you can see, I marked quite a few poems here that I found to be really, really good poems that meant a lot to me, and I just wanted to read a few of those to you. And so that's what we'll do tonight. And then we'll probably, if all goes well, we'll put this video into a YouTube and send you a link so that you can listen and see the reading. So anyway, let's begin reading. And the first one I want to read is The Reaper and the Flowers. Now he wrote many poems, and I'm just going to read a few that meant something to me when I read them, and I marked them. The Reaper and the Flowers. There is a reaper whose name is Death, and with his sickle keen, he reaps the bearded grain at a breath, and the flowers that grow between. Shall I have naught that is fair, saith he? Have not but the bearded grain? Though the breath of these flowers is sweet to me, I will give them all back again. He gazed at the flowers with tearful eyes. He kissed their drooping leaves. It was for the Lord of Paradise. He bound them in his sheaves. My Lord has need of these flowerets gay, the reaper said and smiled. Dear tokens of the earth are they, where he was once a child. They shall all bloom in fields of light, transplanted by my care, and saints upon their garments white their sacred blossoms wear. And the mother gave in tears and pain the flowers she most did love. She knew she should find them all again in the fields of light above. Oh, not in cruelty, not in wrath, the reaper came that day. It was an angel visited the green earth and took the flowers away. That was The Reaper and the Flowers. The next one is called The Light of Stars. The Light of Stars. The night is come, but not too soon, and sinking silently, all silently the little moon drops down behind the sky. There is no light in earth or heaven, but the cold light of stars. And the first watch of night is given to the red planet Mars. Is it the tender star of love, the star of love and dreams? Oh no, from that blue tent above, a hero's armor gleams. And earnest thoughts within me rise when I behold afar, suspended in the evening skies, the shield of that red star. O star of strength, I see thee stand and smile upon my pain. Thou beckonest with thy mailed hand, and I am strong again. Within my breast there is no light but the cold light of stars. I give the first watch of the night to the red planet Mars, the star of the unconquered will. He rises in my breast, serene and resolute and still and calm and self-possessed. And thou too, whosoever thou art, that readest this brief psalm, as one by one thy hopes depart, be resolute and calm. O fear not in the world like this, and thou shalt know ere long. Know how sublime a thing it is to suffer and be strong. Really cool poem. Here's one called Footsteps of Angels. The Footsteps of Angels. When the hours of day are numbered and the voices of the night, wake the better soul that slumbered to a holy calm delight. Ere the evening lamps are lighted, and like phantoms grim and tall, shadows from the fitful firelight dance upon the parlor wall. Then the forms of the departed enter at the open door. The beloved, the true-hearted, come to visit me once more. He, the young and strong, who cherished noble longings for the strife, by the roadside fell and perished, weary with the march of life. They, the holy ones and weakly, who the cross of suffering bore, folded their pale hands so meekly, spake with us on earth no more. And with them the being beauteous, who unto my youth was given, more than all things else to love me, and is now a saint in heaven. With a slow and noiseless footstep comes that messenger divine, takes the vacant chair beside me, lays her gentle hand in mine. And she sits and gazes at me with those deep and tender eyes, like the stars, so still and saint-like, looking downward from the skies. Uttered not, yet comprehended, is the Spirit's voiceless prayer. Soft rebukes in blessings ended, breathing from her lips of air. O thou oft depressed and lonely, all my fears are laid aside, if I but remember only such as these have lived and died. Wonderful poem. This one is called The Burial of the Mini Sink. So we'll see what this one is all about. Burial of the Mini Sink. On sunny slope and beach and swell, the shadowed light of evening fell. And where the maple's thief was brown, with soft and silent lass came down. The glory that the wood receives at sunset in its golden leaves. Far upward in the mellow light rose the blue hills, one cloud of white around a far uplifted cone. In the warm blush of evening shone, an image of the silver lakes by which the Indian's soul awakes. But soon a funeral hymn was heard, where the soft breath of evening stirred the tall gray forest and the band of stern in heart and strong in hand. come winding down beside the wave to lay the red chief in his grave. They sang that by his native bowers he stood in the last moon of flowers, and 30 snows had not yet shed their glory on the warrior's head. But as the summer fruit decays, so died he in those naked days. A dark cloud of the roebuck's skin covered the warrior, and within its heavy folds the weapons made for the hard toils of war were laid. The cuirass woven of plaited reeds, and the broad belt of shells and beads. Before a dark-haired virgin train chanted the death dirge of the slain. Behind, the long procession came of hoary men and chiefs of fame, with heavy hearts and eyes of grief, leading the war horse of their chief. Read that again. Leading the war horse of their chief. Remember that. Stripped of his proud and martial dress, uncurbed, unreined, and riderless, with darting eye and nostril spread, and heavy and impatient tread, he came, and off that eye so proud, asked for his rider in the crowd. They buried the dark chief, they freed, beside the grave his battle steed, and swift an arrow cleaved its way to his stern heart, one piercing neigh arose, and on the dead man's plain the rider grasps his steed again. Oh, wow, that's really powerful. The Indian chief had died, and he had a horse that was his own, wonderful, big, beautiful steed that nobody else would ride. And so when the chief died, and they buried the chief, they brought his horse to the grave, and they killed the horse so that the horse and the chief could be together again and ride throughout eternity. Really a great poem. Wow. Here's another one that I really enjoyed. It's called The Wreck of the Hesperus. The Wreck of the Hesperus. It's a boat, schooner, a ship. The Wreck of the Hesperus. It was the schooner Hesperus that sailed the wintry sea, and the skipper had taken his little daughter to bear him company. Blue were her eyes as a fairy flax, her cheeks like the dawn of day, and her bosom white as the hawthorn buds that ope in the month of May. The skipper, he stood beside the helm, his pipe was in his mouth, and he watched how the veering flaw did blow, the smoke now west, now south. Then up and spake an old sailor, had sailed to the Spanish main. I pray thee, put into yonder port, for I fear a hurricane. Last night the moon had a golden ring, and tonight no moon we see. The skipper, he blew a whiff from his pipe, and a scornful laugh laughed he. Colder and louder blew the wind, a gale from the northeast. The snow fell hissing in the brine, and the billows frothed like yeast. Down came the storm, and smote amain the vessel in its strength. She shuddered and paused like a frightened steed, then leaped her cable's length. Come thither, my little daughter, and do not tremble so, for I can weather the roughest gale that ever wind did blow. He wrapped her warm in his seaman's coat against the stinging blast. He put a rope from a torn, broken spar and bound her to the mast. Oh, Father, I hear the church bells ring. Oh, say, what may it be? It is a fog bell on a rock-bound coast, and he steered for the open sea. Oh, Father, I hear the sound of guns. Oh, say, what may it be? Some ship in distress that cannot live in such an angry sea. Oh, Father, I see a gleaming light. Oh, say, what may that be? But the father answered never a word. A frozen corpse was he. Lashed to the helm, all stiff and stark, with his face turned to the skies. The lantern gleamed through the gleaming snow on his fixed and glassy eyes. Then the maiden clasped her hands and prayed that saved she might be. And she thought of Christ who stilled the wave on the lake of Galilee. And fast through the midnight dark and drear, through the whistling sleet and snow, like sheeted ghost, the vessel swept towards the reef of Norman's woe. And ever the fitful gusts between, a sound came from the land. It was the sound of the trampling surf on the rocks and the hard sea sand. The breakers were right beneath her bows. She drifted a dreary wreck, and a whooping billow swept the crew like icicles from her deck. She struck where the white and fleecy waves looked soft as carded wool, but the cruel rocks, they gored her side like the horns of an angry bull. Her rattling shrouds all sheathed in ice, with the mast went by the board. Like a vessel of glass, she stove and sank. Ho, ho, the breakers roared. At daybreak on the bleak sea beach, a fisherman stood aghast to see the form of a maiden fair lashed close to a drifting mast. The salt sea was frozen on her breast, the salt tears in her eyes, and he saw her hair like the brown seaweed on the billows fall and rise. Such was the wreck of the Hesperus in the midnight and the snow. Christ save us all from a death like this on the reef of Norman's Woe. I'll read you one more, I think. Let's see what the time is like. This is called The Village Blacksmith. Wonderful poem. The Village Blacksmith. Under a spreading chestnut tree, the village smithy stands. The smith, a mighty man is he, with large and sinewy hands, and the muscle of his brawny arms are strong as iron bands. His hair is crisp and black and long. His face is like the tan. His brow is wet with honest sweat. He earns whatever he can and looks the whole world in the face, for he owes not any man. Week in, week out, from morn till night, you can hear his bellows blow. You can hear him swing his heavy sledge with measured beat and slow, like a sexton ringing the village bell when the evening sun is low. And children coming home from school look in at the open door. They love to see the flaming forge and hear the bellows roar, and catch the burning sparks that fly like chaff from a threshing floor. He goes on Sunday to the church and sits among his boys. He hears the parson pray and preach. He hears his daughter's voice singing in the village choir, and it makes his heart rejoice. It sounds to him like his mother's voice. It sounds like her mother's voice, singing in paradise. He needs must think of her once more, how in the grave she lies. And with his hard, rough hand he wipes a tear out of his eyes. Toiling, rejoicing, sorrowing, onward through life he goes. Each morning sees some task begin. Each evening sees it close. Something attempted, something done, has earned a night's repose. Thanks, thanks to thee, my worthy friend, for the lesson thou hast taught. Thus at the flaming forge of life, our fortunes must be fraught. Thus on its sounding anvil shaped, each burning deed and thought. I hope you've enjoyed our reading this evening. I've got one more called A Rainy Day. This is a short one. A rainy day. We had a rainy day here too. I could have written this one. The day is cold and dark and dreary. It rains and the wind is never weary. The vine still clings to the moldering wall, but at every gust the dead leaves fall, and the day is dark and dreary. My life is cold and dark and dreary. It rains and the wind is never weary. My thoughts still cling to the moldering past, but the hopes of youth fall thick in the blast, and the days are dark and dreary. Be still, sad heart, and cease repining. Behind the clouds is the sun still shining. Thy fate is a common fate of all. Into each life some rain must fall. Some days must be dark and dreary. So, that is a little bit of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And I hope you've enjoyed the reading. He's written so many wonderful poems. I could go on forever. And he's written wonderful stories in poem format, like Hiawatha. One of my favorites is Evangeline, and these go for pages and pages. It's beautiful stories. And Miles Standish. And then there's one about an inn, who he describes all the people at the inn who are staying at the inn, and describes what they do and what they did and how they relate to all the other people there. And it's really fascinating. Wonderful, wonderful story. And so anyway, thank you for your time, and I appreciate your patience, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope at some point in time you're able to look up on the internet or in a book some poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Thank you and good night.